It is Orange and Blue today. Welcome into the show. I'm Will Petersen. He's Andrew Mason filling in today. At least I am, of course, for Cecil Lammy. Mason and I do plenty of radio together, though, so fun to do Orange and Blue today together on this Thursday. Mace, let's start with the fact that it's obviously a sad day in Broncos country. It was a sad night. News breaking late last night, Ronnie Hillman's family announced that he has passed away at the age of 31 after a battle with a rare form of liver cancer. Obviously, a lot of folks didn't see it until this morning, and just sort of this sad reality that, obviously anything can happen, of course, but there's now two members of the Super Bowl 50 team, Ronnie Hillman and the late, great Demaryius Thomas, that are no longer with us. And Mace, sometimes these things are just sort of sobering realities of how fragile life is, and certainly how much Ronnie will be missed.
No doubt. I mean, and with these two in particular, you're actually looking at the leading receiver and the leading rusher on that Super Bowl team in terms of yardage gained. Demaryius was the leader in receiving yardage, of course, and Ronnie Hillman, remember, he was splitting time with C.J. Anderson that year, and he led the Broncos in rushing yardage. And then, I mean, you look back at that, and I wrote about this at denverfan.com. You look back at other than Super Sunday, the most important day of that season was probably this regular season finale when Peyton Manning came off the bench for the only time in his career. Well, Demaryius Thomas had a 72-yard touchdown at the start of the game. Ronnie Hillman had the touchdown run at the end of the game with about 5 minutes to go that put the Broncos in front to stay. I mean, these are two guys without whom you're not talking about the Broncos having 3 world championships, perhaps. I mean, so they had a massively important role, and with Ronnie Hillman, I mean, it's just something. It's just something awful. The cancer that turned out he had, it was renal medullary carcinoma. And I mean, I was looking it up, Will. I mean, this is something that literally the number of cases at one point earlier this century, the number of documented cases was only like in the hundreds. I mean, it's what he's dealing with. It's exceptionally rare. Typically happens to young people who have sickle cell trait. And I mean, it's just the fragility of life, the randomness of life, and death and all that. But it's heartbreaking. I mean, I think we've got Ronnie's family and friends all in our thoughts, and his former teammates as well. But, saying goodbye to 2 key players on that 2015 team before their 34th birthday, consider that both Demaryius Thomas and Ronnie Hillman died at an age younger than Russell Wilson is at today. Yeah. To put it in perspective, their lives were supposed to be just beginning. It's just, it's heartbreaking. And, I think there are a lot of people that were around that 2015 team that it's sort of making everyone kind of take stock a little bit today.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Russell Wilson posted a nice tribute on Instagram this morning. He and Ronnie Hillman, of course, entered the league in the same time in 2012. Peyton Manning, within the last half hour, has posted a tribute on Instagram, and he made a good point. He said, listen, Ronnie and I came to the Broncos the same year, and we left the same year. They both came in 2012, Hillman as a rookie and Peyton as a free agent. And then after 2015, Manning, of course, retired, and Ronnie went on and had a short stint with the Vikings and the Chargers and the Cowboys before exiting the NFL. We won't spend the whole show on it, Mace, because there's some news I want to get to today. But before we turn the page, you were the beat writer. You worked for the team. I had a couple interactions with Ronnie, but didn't know him all that well. Give us a peek behind the curtain of what kind of guy he was and sort of your interactions with Ronnie over the years.
He was really quiet. I mean, when he was in a good space, he had a very bright smile when he was having a good day. But professionally speaking, for Ronnie, during the course of his 4 years in Denver, let's face it, they weren't all good days. I mean, he really didn't find his role, find his niche on this team really until that last season of 2015 when he was basically part of what was, for all intents and purposes, a 50-50 timeshare with CJ Anderson. And so, the part of what I remember about Ronnie is, I remember that, again, when he was doing well, he had that easy smile, but he's also a dude that kind of took things to heart. And that, I think, at times contributed to some frustrating moments for him on the field that I think ate at him when he got off the field as well. But when you look back on it, it's good that we at least got the glimpse in that final season that he was here of the kind of player he was and the kind of player he had the capability of being. And also to the credit of the coaches there, they found the right role for Ronnie Hillman. I think, and the other thing I think also with Hillman, I think he did struggle with sort of the weight of expectations, because when you are a second or third round running back, the expectation is you're going to become the RB1 and you're going to be the bell cow back. That really wasn't something in retrospect that was that really Ronnie Hillman as an NFL player was capable of. But as we saw in 2015, when he was part of a tandem, when he was used properly in the right situations, he could be a productive back. But yeah, part of what I remember a lot of with Ronnie, Will, is that it was just at times, like a lot of guys getting into the NFL, kind of struggling to find his way. The thing that that scouts haven't figured out, that teams haven't figured out, is how to know how a player is going to handle struggles. Yeah. Sometimes they really go into a shell and that's it. I think it's to Ronnie Hillman's credit that he, even though he got down and got frustrated at times, did show persistence, did keep battling. And at the end of the day, he didn't walk away with a long career in the NFL, but he walked away with a Super Bowl ring, and he was a key part of that team getting a Super Bowl ring. All things considered, that's actually a pretty good football legacy for Ronnie to have.
Yeah, no doubt. A quick personal story. So when I was at the University of Missouri from 2008 to 2012, they obviously had high expectations. They were great teams. They had a lot of NFL players: Chase Daniel, Blaine Gabbert, Jeremy Maclin, Chase Kaufman, Alden Smith. The list goes on. A pesky San Diego State team came into Columbia, Missouri in I believe 2010. And we went to the game. It was our dad's weekend. My father was there. And we were thinking, Missoula will win by 30. This will be a big party. We'll go to the bars, whatever. Well, a young man by the name of Ronnie Hillman had different ideas. He went off for more than 230 yards and 2 very long touchdowns that made Mizzou trail by 4 points in the final minutes. It took an 80-yard touchdown pass from Blaine Gabbert to TJ Moe for Mizzou to escape with a wild win. But I always remembered Ronnie Hillman. And then when Ronnie got to the Broncos, I talked to him about that game. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I remember that game. I remember those long runs and how I stunned that crowd." So, it was just sort of, in college, I didn't know who he was. And then when he became a Bronco, I connected the dots. And, I still remember him telling me, "Oh, yeah, I remember that game." So,
yeah. And the thing is, even though, and the other thing, like you mentioned San Diego State, like I saw some video and some pictures of him earlier this year, I believe, before he was diagnosed, speaking to some people around San Diego State and speaking with the team. He was still very much in the San Diego State orbit, and he's mourned there as well pretty profoundly because he's one of the guys that really helped San Diego State as a program reach the level it's been at for the last decade or so, which is pretty perennial competitor in the Mountain West that produces a fair amount of NFL players. And so, and Ronnie had a big role in that as well. So it's funny you mentioned kind of what he did at San Diego State, because he's actually a pretty important player in the recent history of Aztecs football. And so that they're mourning in much the same way Broncos country is today.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I would encourage everyone to go read Mesa's piece at denverfan.com about two members of the Super Bowl 50 team leaving us far, far too soon. All right, Mace, there was a Broncos practice today. It was indoors, which no one can blame them. We're in the midst of our coldest stretch here in Denver in something like 30 years. But the indoor creates some tricky things here, right? And that is they don't want certain guys practicing on the turf because they don't want them to aggravate injuries. Yet the Broncos are playing indoors on Sunday in LA on Christmas. So sort of walk us through who didn't practice. And the names I'm really focused on, I know fans are curious about, are, of course, Randy Gregory, Dalton Risner, Courtland Sutton. And then I'll add a fourth, and that's Latavius Murray, who obviously had a huge game and went to a DNP today. But maybe that was a little bit more of a formality.
Yeah, and the thing with Latavius, he was limited yesterday, and he's got a foot issue. But he was actually out there on the field. Now, we didn't see practice because everything was done remotely via Zoom. We had a pool reporter, Jeff Legwold of ESPN, who was over there and provided a pool report and noted that Latavius was actually, even though he wasn't taking the individual drills and he didn't have his helmet on, he was over there with the running backs coach Tyrone Wheatley. And so that kind of tells you that it very much was a rest day. But you mentioned they're playing on turf. They're practicing on turf today. So I think this is one of those things where they're looking at, okay, how do we limit the accumulation of wear playing on turf, knowing that we're going to have this game? And so that's why you saw guys held out like Dalton Risner, like K'Wan Williams. And also with Randy Gregory now, he had a maintenance day yesterday, and that was a grass field practice. They were outside when it was just a little bit breezy before the weather turned. And then he wasn't out there today. I'll tell you something, just after the game in the as the media gaggle was breaking up, there were still a few reporters there, and Gregory was asked kind of how he was feeling after the game, how the knee was feeling, and he answered like bleep. So, I mean, he during the course of his recovery, one day he was talking and just having kind of a casual conversation with some reporters, and the thing that he kind of noted was he's got in that recovery, he had good days and bad days. And so I said, well, okay, Randy, what was today? And he basically said it was a bleepy day. So always colorful as Randy Gregory, but it's sort of it's also kind of sobering in looking at just, you know, where he stands where he stands health wise and maybe how far he has to go. He wanted to play last week and he wants to play the rest of the season because he's trying to kind of get past that hurdle. But the fact that he's still dealing with discomfort, it's definitely worrisome in light of the injury history that he has.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So I guess the logical question would be, at this point, does it even make sense to play Randy Gregory, not only against the Rams, but in the last two games? He tried against the Cardinals. He tells you guys it feels like bleep. He's still got a lot of money left on that contract and theoretically a lot of years. This season's shot. They're 4-10. They're obviously eliminated. Isn't there a temptation, at least there would be for me, to just sit Gregory down these last three games? Because the worst thing that could happen would be obviously blowing a knee, blowing an ACL, and you lose him for 2023, or at least most of it as well.
Well, I mean, the thing that it depends on what kind of knee issue he's dealing with. If there's a risk of making it worse, then you sit him. If it's just soreness and maybe even some scar tissue that he's just got to get past here, and he can't, and it's sore, but he's not necessarily making it worse by playing, then I think you want to go ahead and play him. It's the devil's kind of in the details of what the injury is here. So, and where he actually stands. And from what I've gathered, it's not something where there's a real great fear of him exacerbating this by playing. It's something that he wants to get, that they want him to get past, and that Randy Gregory himself, I think, wants to get past as well, and would rather do that now and then go into the off season kind of with a clean slate and hopefully having a full off season instead of like this past off season where he spent most of it in injury rehab. He really wants to have this in his rearview mirror, and that's why he's pushing to play.
All right, I want to get to some of the Hackett Pro Bowl stuff, but real quick, just give me a yay or nay on these two guys playing on Sunday. Courtland, Sutton, yay or nay?
Yay.
And how about Dalton, Risner?
Yay, but I would not at all be surprised if he ends up making it worse and has to miss a series or two, kind of like he had to miss a series on Sunday. Dalton isn't playing hurt; he's playing injured right now.
Okay. And he's also playing for a contract, Mace. We all know that. He wants to get the best tape he can, not only obviously for the Broncos, but for the other 31 teams as well. Which
can be dangerous if you're playing injured, because is he putting bad film out there? That's, and Dalton kind of has that. He has that switch in his brain that he's going to do anything for the guys around him, and he's going to do anything to try and play. But if it's about putting the film out there, the film has not been vintage Dalton Risner at times over the course of this year. That being said, it's a better line when he's out there just because of his experience and presence. I'd say this, like, it goes all the way back to when they drafted Dalton in 2019. They drafted Dalton to help Garrett Bowles along, which is crazy when you think about the fact that Bowles was a third-year guy and Dalton was a rookie, and that they drafted Dalton to kind of help Bowles get settled and figure things out over at left tackle. But that's the sort of presence that Dalton Risner has along that offensive line. It's not just what he does. It's how he's spotting things for other guys, how he's working in tandem with other guys. So, Dalton's decided that he's going to persist and play basically unless it's impossible to do so. And for his sake, whether it's here or Denver, I hope that he gets rewarded for the persistence, because the film has just been okay watching him lately.
No, that'll be one to watch this offseason, particularly with offensive line, such an issue for the Broncos and such a priority for most likely George Paton, if not George Paton, whoever the new general manager is. All right, Mace,
it's going to be George Paton, Will.
All right.
I know where you stand on this.
Yes,
it's going to be George Paton. That's the GM in the offseason.
All right. So. Well, he's got a lot of work to do, a lot of work to earn the trust back of this guy right here and a lot of Broncos country. All right, Mace, and Nathaniel Hackett today. It's a Zoom presser, right? So it's not, as intimate in person, whatever. So it's a little less formal, but he gets asked, hey, who else did you think should have made the Pro Bowl? And he has this look on his face of like, maybe he's trying to think of a name or two. If you missed it, the Broncos only have one Pro Bowler, Pat Surtain II, one alternate, Justin Simmons. And rather than go campaign for people on his top-ranked defense, he just says, I think everyone should have made the Pro Bowl. Is that just who Hackett is? Or did you read that as a giant cop-out like I did? Or he just couldn't think of anyone off the top of his head, when the reality is he's the coach of the football team. He should know 3, 4, 5 guys. I'm looking at a Josie Jewell, for example, that maybe should have gotten some Pro Bowl consideration.
Yeah, he's trying to make everybody happy, I guess. And also, I think he knows the reality of it, and it was alluded to now by him that the losses do have an impact on Pro Bowl voting, and he was pretty realistic about that. And so I just think he said that because he didn't want to maybe say a player or two and then realize, oh, I missed somebody, or, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that player. It just became kind of the easiest answer. Of course, if you take that to its conclusion, as I put on the text chain, I mean, so we're talking about Corliss Waitman being a Pro Bowler, although, hey, he had a great punt there in the last 2 minutes, the last 3 minutes on Sunday. I want to tip my cap to him for that. But the season-long body of work for Corliss Waitman, for Brandon McManus, for most of those guys, it just doesn't scream Pro Bowl or even close to it. So I think he was I'm not sure he was prepared for the question, if we can be fair, because I think that's one where if you'd been prepared, it would have been very, very quickly. I think an answer would have been Josie Jewell.
Yes.
That he would have been the next one to name based on his performance, and maybe even tip of the cap to a Draymond Jones or an Alex Singleton as well. I mean, those are the guys that I think you would have looked at and said, okay, those are next in consideration, right? Let's face it, nobody on offense
No.
is anywhere close.
But
Oh my goodness.
it does speak to the level this defense has played at.
Yeah.
Kind of even with the injuries and the changes, because you look, you trade Bradley Chubb, you lose Ronald Darby, Randy Gregory goes down for a lot of time, Jonas Griffith goes down, K'Wan Williams had a stint on IR. There's not a ton of names that jump out to you as, Pro Bowl snub. Yet the group has remained cohesive throughout. At some point, that's got to be coaching and Evero sort of having this defense, no matter who the players are, sort of up to snuff every week. I mean, outside the Carolina game, even the Chiefs game, I thought they didn't play all that bad. There was a pick six mixed in there. I mean, this defense has been really good. Of course, the Devontae Adams touchdown in overtime comes to mind. But in general, Mace, a lot of moving parts on this defense, yet not a lot of Pro Bowlers. To me, that means good coaching.
Yeah. I mean, I would look at that Chiefs game and say, basically, they got Mahomes on a couple of plays.
Yeah, he just made brilliant plays.
Right. And, I'll do this second time in the show, tip my cap. That's when he hit McKinnon with that, kind of push, no look pass.
Yeah.
What can you do? I mean, there's no defense for that. And so I kind of removed those plays from the equation. And yeah, Evero deserves a ton of credit here for keeping this thing together, not only with injuries, but you take Bradley Chubb out at midseason. There was basically a little bit of a dip immediately after they lost Chubb because, of course, Baron Browning was still injured and working his way back, and Jonathan Cooper wasn't all the way back from a hamstring issue. But once they got the pieces healthy there on the edge, I would argue there really wasn't a drop off from when Bradley Chubb was there. Now, some of that is on the players. The Broncos have really good depth on the edge. It's a reason why they could look at Bradley Chubb and say, okay, we're not going to renew him. We can trade him because we have confidence in guys like Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper, and then even seeing where Nick Bonito goes. But yeah, he's kept this thing together. And the other thing is also, and this is not just on Evero, but the entire defensive coaching staff, players get better. It's interesting. We talk about like how on the offensive line, even before you had a bunch of injuries, Garrett Bowles looked like he was regressing. Lloyd Cushenberry looked like he was regressing up front. All lines of the defense, all layers of the defense, all levels of the depth chart, guys seem to be getting better with playing time. Damari Mathis, his first start, it's a penalty circus against the Chargers. That hasn't happened since. They've coached him up very well. You see Jonathan Cooper, who's really playing very good ball when he's out there. I wrote this in the game film review. Like you can always rely on Jonathan Cooper getting 2 or 3 pressures a game. And they're usually impactful pressures.
Yep.
And this is somebody who was a 7th round pick last year. Deshaun Williams is playing the best football of his career. You have guys like Matt Henningsen who've rotated and contributed. Eni Awazurike is starting to get some reps, and he's getting better as well. So when you see this sort of improvement across the board, it's testament to not only Evero, but all the coaches that are under him. And it's why if they move on from Nathaniel Hackett, I'm fascinated to see what would happen in terms of the staff, because traditionally when a head coach gets fired, all the assistant coaches, they say, okay, you can go interview somewhere else for lateral moves, right? You're going to give permission for a position coach to interview as a coordinator unless you're just being a total jerk about things. But if it's possible that if they do move on from Hackett, that maybe on the offensive side, it's being said, okay, you guys can go interview wherever, but that keeping the entire defensive staff together, starting with Evero, is a huge priority. And maybe whoever becomes the next head coach, if they move on from Hackett, one of the things they're asking is keep this defensive staff together. Now, there may be some natural attrition as well, because someone like Christian Parker, the defensive backs coach, he's probably going to get interviews for defensive coordinator gigs coming up this offseason. So you may not be able to keep everybody just because some are going to be bumped up. But I think whether Hackett is the coach or not, a priority is keeping that entire defensive coaching staff together.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I think they should give Evero a look for head coach. I told DMAC that and Rachel on Monday during coffee break. I said, I want Sean Payton. I want Jim Harbaugh. If not, I want to keep it in-house because I think you have the guy right here. I'd much rather have him than a retread like a Frank Reich or something like that. All right, Mace, we're running out of time. So let's move on to they're going to L.A. this weekend. You have Evero, you have Dwayne Stukes, sort of homecoming for them. Obviously, Stukes was with Joe DeCamillis on the special teams, Evero on the defensive side of the ball before getting the promotion here. Can that help at all? And I know it was coordinator day, so they were all asked about it. Can that help the Broncos that they know the Rams, even though it's a different Rams team from a season ago?
It can help a little bit, but I think given how much change the Rams have had foisted upon them this year, probably not as much as it might have been if they'd had a normal season in terms of injuries. I mean, the institutional knowledge they have about Aaron Donald, that's not going to do much good. The institutional knowledge about Cooper Kupp, not going to do much good. Maybe you still get something from the fact that Evero worked with the Rams defensive backs and he can give a pointer or two on how to beat Jalen Ramsey. But I mean, it's just a different team now that's going to try anything. So I think that part of it's probably, I think it's overrated even in a normal circumstance, but I think it's really overrated. It's really overrated in this one. That's why when I asked Evero and Stukes about it, I wasn't asking about like what they knew. It was more like what you got from Sean McVay. And that's actually pretty interesting because everyone thinks of McVay as an offensive genius, but Evero kind of talked about how involved McVay was in the defense and how he would bring things up that would make the defensive coaches kind of question a little bit what they were doing and tweak things. And because he would say, well, if I'm an offensive coordinator, this is how I would counter it. Yep. And so it's a reminder of why Sean McVay is successful, that even though he's, this bright offensive tactician, that he really is just an excellent overall football coach who's involved in all three phases of what the Rams were doing. It's a big part of why they won.
All right, Mace, let's close the show on some fun stuff. That is these uniforms that were revealed to the Broncos at headquarters today with the Rudolph. Look at that. You can see it.
That's so cute
on the helmet, the ridiculous, ugly Christmas sweater on the jersey. This was a prank played not only on the Broncos, but on the Rams as well, as you can see at the top of the screen there. Mates, I would encourage people to go to denverfan.com. I wrote about this. I put the videos in the story. But how funny of a prank was this? And did you like the uniforms or no, particularly the reindeer on the helmet?
Okay, first of all, I love the reindeer on the helmet. I actually, for my collection now, I want to be able I want to somehow have that helmet.
Yes.
Like I want, or a mock-up of it with that logo. And by the way, I love what they did. They turned the stripes on the back of the helmet into a Christmas tree.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Oh, the layers to this were just tremendous. Like I look on the reindeer, look how they have kind of the stripes on the little shadows on the neck that are just like on the regular Bronco logo. I mean, I looked at this and I'm like, this is actually awesome. And look, I said this in the text chain, so I'll say it publicly here as well. We saw a completely mismatched uniform for 2 games this year. The white with the orange, the blue side panel, and then the blue pants with the orange side panel. It was one of the worst, legitimately one of the worst uniforms that I've seen in my lifetime covering football.
Oof. Okay. You're not wrong.
Yeah. You've already gone there. When you're going through hell, keep going. When you're going through chaos, keep going. So I wish they would wear these on Christmas Day. I wish they would wear the ugly sweater look. And I mean, the NBA on Christmas, they have teams over the years. Sometimes they've had funky uniforms. They've had Christmas themed uniforms. I know why the NFL doesn't do it, because there's a much more limited game inventory. The NBA has 82 games, so if you wear a goofy uniform for 1 out of 82, who cares? If you wear it for 1 out of 17 in the NFL, people go ape for whatever reason. But nevertheless, if they're going to play a bunch of games on Christmas, have some fun. Like I wish they were wearing that uniform.
Yeah.
Just bring it on. And trust me, it would not be worse than what they wore in London.
Yeah. No, I was going to say I'm with you, particularly because we did have that back-to-back weeks of hideous uniforms versus the Jaguars and the Titans. All right, Mace, it's always fun. We're already out of time. I appreciate it. We are off tomorrow as we begin our holiday celebration. So we wish everyone a Merry Christmas. For those that are celebrating, Happy Holidays. And Mace and Cecil will be back with you on Monday after Broncos and Rams. Take care, everyone.